Шановні колеги, Український кризовий медіа-центр продовжує свою роботу, і наразі ми розпочинаємо брифінг, яким відкриваємо цикл дискусій щодо реформи
the reforms of education and secondary school, and we are going to speak about extracurricular education reform, and our speakers believe that the situation is critical and extracurricular education is in a bad condition, and I invite our speakers to the floor. Please take the floor. Good day. Shalit Oleksandr Grigorьevich, Director of Ukrainian Schools of Artistic Education and Head of the Board. And why we are here today? First is that we have a complex of reforms that was proposed by our government. Among these reforms, there's no place for reforms in extracurricular activities, unfortunately. Decentralization is proclaimed, and decentralization is an important aspect to relay the power to at local level, but extracurricular activity and extracurricular institutions, it's very difficult for them to survive now, and I will give you some examples. And there are 3.5 million of population in Kyiv, and we have a formula of financing of population in here, and we wanted to change the formula of financing from one person to one pupil, and the situation didn't change. In 2005, President Yushchenko vetoed changes to the law on the budget, where they wanted to transfer to the formula that is calculated per one student. And we have small towns like Kolomia, where there is 25,000 of population. Taxes collected there can't provide financing for education, and these institutions in these towns will be destroyed in such a way. And we have two draft laws. First one on culture, changes to the law on culture, about museums and theatrical activities, and the changes were introduced in the first reading. And the next speaker will give us a picture on this, what is happening at the level of communication among government and society and governmental bodies. And this draft law that was adopted in the first reading and will be adopted in the second one. So they provided a scheme of contracts that is not understandable. And I asked our Prime Minister and Minister Kirilenko, I asked what is contract in this case. And this is a contract with the employer, and by law it is stated that we get paid the employer who hired the employee. He won't be able to change the conditions. There won't be any benefits according to this law. we should name the things by their own name. These are contracts that limits the employment for 10 years. And by this law, it is indicated that the person that undergo the competition should provide a program for development of the institution, and this program is an integral part of this contract and his opportunity for his employment. And the person cannot know the potential of the institution for 5 years, and to create this program you should be a member of this institution, or you should understand the structure of institutions like these. And today and tomorrow will be hearing, and they will we are concerned with the draft law. They envisage the creation of new structural units that till this moment we had state attestation that was organized by the Ministry on Education, and all institutions created their own statutes, attestations of these educational institutions. And now we are speaking about licensing. And previously we were conducting tenders, and we should have the many documents to undergo the procedure, and the members of licensing commission they went to different institutions because the members of this commission were professors, associate professors. They didn't get together because the company that came for the license, they had to go from one institution to the other and show the documents to different members, and only in half a year they got the license. The second part is that now we have a mechanism of attestation of employees, and there are some special centers for this attestation, and it is not understandable from the law how the centers should work. So if they want to reduce the number of public servants, so they should provide employment for the people who were fired at different levels of educational institutions. And how can we establish the level of competence and our particular we are speaking about art school for young children, then institutes, national academies, and also retraining institutions. So here we understand that in order to get the qualification of a teacher of a school, of a higher educational institution, you should first complete 8 years of musical school, then 8 years of college, then musical academy or institute of music. And then if someone wants to be especially wise, 3 years of postgraduate training. So you should study for 21 years to become a specialist. So you should address then to certification center and then prove your that will approve your qualification to get higher pay. And I want to stress that today salary is in all budget institutions in one, I will tell you, 1,654 hryvnias, and to get the salary of 12th rank, it is important that the level of qualification was the highest, and the salary is composed not only from the main part, but also they pay for the number of years that you worked, and there's also a provision that provides some payment for qualification. So there's no other components, and this is the main what I wanted to say, what the problems are from that laws that were adopted recently. And I give the floor to my colleague, Haiduk Natalia, who is going to tell you about the positions of trade union in this process. Please speak slowly, because half of the time you were provided, you took already. So please.
Good afternoon. My name is Haiduk Halyna. I'm a deputy head of the Cultural Workers Union of Ukraine. I would like to tell a few words about the contracts, labor contracts, which the previous speaker mentioned. The draft law 269D, it violates the international legislation and national legislation and the Constitution of Ukraine at the beginning of the year to fulfill the EU-Ukraine agreement. The order of the Cabinet of Ministers was issued and which took the EU directives to implement them in national legislation, which are saying that labor contracts are concluded for certain years, for a certain number of years, only in those cases where lifelong contracts can't be concluded. So contracts for indefinite time can't be concluded. Only in those cases the contracts for certain periods are signed. And we are told to sign the contracts for specific periods, which is against the Constitution of Ukraine. Also, the Supreme Court give the interpretation that the labor contracts for certain periods could not be used. One section of this interpretation is saying that all cultural workers, the ministry's order is saying that all workers who are now working in our music schools and other cultural institutions should be transferred to a specific number of years contracts to the contracts which are concluded for 1 year or several years. So labor contracts have not been accepted yet because our trade union is against this, because we are fighting with the cabinet of ministers, the Ministry of Education, committee of the Verkhovna Rada, that such labor contracts can't be in place. We can't agree with them. As concerns the draft law 2669D, we sent the messages to almost every MPs, and some MPs responded to us that they share our position, and we also addressed the President of Ukraine. If this draft law is approved, we asked him to veto the approved law. As concerns the draft law on education, you know, so far the law on education was in compliance with the Constitution of Ukraine. The 53rd article of the Constitution ensures the development of extracurricular education, but the extracurricular education is non-compulsory, non-secondary education. In this draft law, there are many there are many problems concerning social aspects, in particular the seniority benefits, they are excluded, and there are no safeguards on average salaries of teaching staff. We also addressed the committee of the Verkhovna Rada, so that this draft law, as it is raw, so that it is refined but not adopted, and we will be proving our position at the sitting of the Verkhovna Rada committee. Good afternoon. My name is Lukyanchuk Mykola. I am a director of Viktor Kosenko Music School for Children number 3 in Kyiv, and I am a deputy chairman of the board. What threats do I see if the draft law on education is adopted? The first threat, now our music schools work in a very intensive manner, and our pupils are well known all over the world. Cultural education is a special type of education, and one of the threats is that for many years the Ministry of Education have been trying to subordinate us. Now we are under the responsibility of the Ministry of Culture. We provide cultural development and education to children, and if we are in this scope of mandate of the Ministry of Education, then we shall lose the vertical from small child to an artist. Each artist is a unique piece of master, is a unique master, and if extracurricular education institutions shall switch to mass production of ordinary people who have something common with music, it would be hard to be musicians, real musicians. Now we have governmental production. If decentralization will be both at top power level and so forth, we will lose those delayed mechanisms which provide for our existence. The main threat is that music schools in faraway villages would not be able to exist at all. And if the existing law on education is changed, why it is changed? Just for is reform for reform. This is a reform not for high quality changes, but just to demonstrate that we are reformers, we are introducing novelties, but there is no regular support to artistic schools. We have methodological centers which work in Kyiv, in Chernihiv, in Kharkiv. They are based in large cities and educational programs include they are given to the extracurriculum school, but nobody understands how they are tested, who develops them. In order to develop a curricula on some discipline, the most professional, best teachers develop these programs. It was the previous practices, but now these practices have been changed. Just any teacher can develop his own curricula. So I would like that the law on education, if it is updated, it should be professional and much better than the draft law which is now offered.
Good day. My name is Yevhen Pleshakov. I represent Parents Committee. And today I'm here to understand the situation. The previous speakers are professionals who told us about the situation, the discussion of the law, and in the title of our briefing, there were words on the way to destruction. So we are very concerned with this law on extracurricular education in Ukraine. First of all, I would like to say that if the government and deputies are going to underfinance arts education, this will lead to the closure of art school, and only commercial schools will be available for kids. So we as parents are here to understand the situation. We don't get European salaries, we get much less, and after studying the situation, I will be open with you. The lesson in commercial school is equal to the monthly payment for state school. So it will be impossible for us to pay so much money. 90% of children won't be able to study at art school. I have a feeling that our state prepares I don't want to say that they will we should educate our people here in our state. Our people won't be able to pay for education of their children. We are concerned and during I would like to say and cite Bismarck state that economize on children, start to build prisons. Thank you. Do you have some questions or comments? So I ask speakers to return on stage, and we have a deputy minister on education here in our studio. So if you have some comments, so I give the floor to you. Good day, dear colleagues. Good day, dear friends. So first, I would like to say that the Ministry of Education, that is a central body of education of Ukraine, we don't have a direction for destruction. Those issues connected with the law. We provide new opportunities, we provide new forms of education, formal education and non-formal education. Of course, extracurricular education is a form of non-informal informal education, and children can get something new, some arts education. So every person, not only children, can get this education, and this is true. And we worked openly. We work in a group, and the changes were introduced to the law, and it will be only to advantage of people. So the certification will be an instrument for motivation of the best, because the salaries are very low. We agree with this, and we as a ministry, we want this salaries to be increased, and those who undergo certification, they will get 20% rise. And also we discussed these issues with trade unions, and we want to thank those teachers who provide good education, and we don't want we want to and about decentralization. We invite you to work together, and as to decentralization, these are great risks, and we had discussions with the Minister of Regional Development, and we think that we should have some norms for this activity. And in Khmelnytsky Oblast, in one of the regions, there won't be there will be some communities, and no one is responsible for these arts schools, because some communities just don't have funds for these institutions. You know that, of course, there are some obstacles, because we need funds, but the state can't provide us with the funds. And preschool activities are also financed from the budget, and under decentralization there can be some threats to the sphere, because state can't provide these funds for the communities. And the state also try to help, and do you have some comments on this? And then we are going to discuss on the 19th of January. They conducted discussions on the draft law, And 3 weeks ago, there was a new version of this law, and it was published on the ministry's site. I studied it in detail, but there's no feedback. Where can I address all my conclusions? And I sent my advice to the ministry, and the ministry pointed out the position that when they worked in the working group, they didn't include our proposals in the decisions. And the last variant about on that this arts education is a formal education, not informal education, and how it is going to look like. I studied the law in detail, and some articles are contradictory. So they say about licensing, and then they are speaking about that informal and formal institutions undergo licensing. So there are some contradictions in the law. So you should listen to those people who want to discuss those laws with you. And my brief comment.
There will not be such an article. There will be an article for special education, the education in arts, such as formal education for Solomia Krushelnitska School of Arts or School of Arts named after Shevchenko. These schools give formal education certificates. We listen to you and we incorporate your comments, believe me. Other questions, please. Dmitro Shevchenko, Голос Свободы, the Voice of Freedom. Could you tell me, please, these legislative amendments, do they have the goal to liquidate, to eradicate the system of artistic education? And also I have a question to Kyiv parents and their committee. Is this the problem in Kyiv or in other regions as well? I would like to note to mention that when President Kuchma tried to subordinate all music schools to the Ministry of Education, and these attempts have not been stopped from those days. And of course, not understanding the specifics of arts schools and trying to transfer us to subordination of the Ministry of Education, this would be eradication. If this draft law on education is adopted, of course, the system will be destroyed, and especially in faraway villages. I have a comment about resubordination of the arts institution. All the budget shall be removed. They will be sent from the Ministry of Culture to the Ministry of Education. These provisions are included in the draft law. In Kyiv, the parents' committees are rather strong, but the music schools in regions, they do not exist anymore already because there are no strong parents' committees there. Could you tell us about the draft law which on contractual contract-based education, whether the contract-based education will have influence on teachers. Of course it will, and it will have the influence on the system as a whole, because fixed term contracts will kill those teachers who have many years of experience, of teaching experience. If now we fire those teachers who have worked for 30 years already, and we shall take music teachers who just start their careers, this would be the destroyance of the system of education. We have already lost many teachers who have private schools now in New Zealand, in Los Angeles, USA, in Germany, but not here. Here, our domestic specialists are not needed. And to comment on the contract-based system, the draft law 2669 goes about the contract-based system of education. The highest education does not cover special education. For example, a physicist or a philologist, he will have higher educational background. How can he or she manage a school of music if he is appointed a director to such an institution? The Minister of Education said that the teaching staff by 80% consists of pensioners. That is why the teachers will work on 1 year based contracts. This is so. This is a true situation. We address the Ministry of Education, then this is a violation of the Constitution of Ukraine. But these are the plans of the Ministry of Education, and many legislative acts are to be adopted to include this amendment. And now you can also have talks off record. Thank you.
Чи виникає те, що готується кодекс законів про працю? Там нема контракту. Чого виникає конфлікт?